Happy, happy Halloween, shameless pandering. So it's the season for ghouls and goblins and hospital admissions for chocolate overdoses. And whilst I'm certain that other reviewers on the site will go for something suitably spooky, I ain't doing that. And this is simply because while I do enjoy me some horror, I just can't do proper scary. I'm not even filming this on Halloween. I'm only really doing this to be an internet obligation. Thus, instead of indulging on the macabre or the supernatural, I'm here to talk about a guy that literally no one even acknowledges anymore. And no, this is not one that is relevant to the state of the brand or the current toy line. I actually wanted to talk about this guy for a while and just saw Halloween as the perfect opportunity. We'll come back to the War for Cybertron stuff after this video, but today, I'm doing this for me. So take my hand as we journey back to 2009 and take a gander at Revenge of the Fallen leader class Optimus Prime. Now, it should be no surprise that a millennial scrub like me got into this franchise via the live action movies. And while the first movie holds a very dear place in my heart, it's very obvious to see that the other films are, shall we say, less than stellar. I swear, prior to Bumblebee, rewatching these bloody movies feel less and less enjoyable each time. And I swear that Revenge of the Fallen has the largest disparity between being entertainingly stupid and insultingly bad. This movie really expects us to buy such shit like jive-talking Autobot twins or Shia LaBeouf not being a meme. But apparently the toy line was really good with cool original designs and decent integration of gimmicks. I mean, there were a few blunders of course, but it was still fondly remembered despite the 100-step conversions and the variations of skits and mudflap. And at the center of it all was the leader class range, giving the biggest and most over-designed characters massive toys with a bunch of spring-loaded crap. But once you can debate amongst yourself whether Megatron or Jetfire were worst, it's near unanimously agreed that Optimus here was by far the best, possibly ever. So going with the traditions of the silly little show, and as the movies would want, we're starting things off with Optimus Prime's very first live-action alt mode. And as expected from the movie toys, this stretched out fist on wheels is a near flawless depiction of a Peterbilt 379. I mean, first of all, there is a substantial weight to this thing. And it might sound weird to say, but most leader class toys nowadays don't have the same general heft that they did back in 2009. They're basically just Voyager class figures with a bunch of extra crap in the box to bulk up the price point. Revenge of the Fallen, on the other hand, was a time of dense plastic and built-in licensed sound gimmicks, which we'll get to later. Prime has just the right amount of heft to remind you that you're carrying 40 quid worth of toy in your hands. Add to the overall solidity of this mode and the sheer size of it, and you have a truck worthy of any leader. The general look of it is pretty great too, with the classic Optimus Prime color palette broken up with a few visual flares to stop him looking generic. I actually love the flame motif with how it starts with a fade at the front and then keeps going along the middle, and then it swaps colors all the way to the end looking like a multi-layered firewall. And it's pretty nice that they gave him not just one, but two Autobot symbols, though the front one is indistinct thanks to the paint. And god, remember when every single figure had silver painted rims without the need of stickers? And it's amazing that there's basically zero kibble in this mode, even when you flip it over to look underneath. Even the mechanized stuff in the windows doesn't look too egregious, nor does it break the otherwise realistic aesthetic of the truck. Honestly, the only thing that I can critique about the look of this mode is just all the prototype gray that's on show. It's literally front and center with the grill and sticks out like a sore thumb on the gas tanks. Like, it's not really terrible, but it is noticeable. Yeah, hi, can I talk to repro labels, please? But in terms of actual criticisms, the top part of the smokestacks are pretty floppy. They're made of that soft pliable material so that they don't break during the conversion, but as a consequence, it does kind of make the rest of the gray on this guy look a bit cheap. And given that the rest of the materials are nice and dense, it does kind of put a damper on things. It's not a major deal breaker, but it still does kind of suck. Otherwise, my Google searches show this thing to be a near flawless replica of the real world vehicle, but there are some missing details like the absence of those weird spike things at the front. I don't know trucks. But the most important focal points are still present, and it even went as far as to include all this rivet detailing as well as these side doors. They even included a trailer hitch, cleverly using it later as the connector for the waist piece. And thanks to the miracle of Michael Bay product placement, this thing's about as accurate as it can get. But I think what really sells this as an Optimus toy is just the general attitude I get from it. Like, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I think of Optimus Prime, I think of a massive battering ram with wheels on the bottom. And as iconic as the G1 cab of a truck may be, I feel as if this one better fits that description. There's just so much power and weight behind this thing that puts so many of its ilk to shame thanks to the sheer amount of brass and gravitas. It just rolls in, kicks your ass, and then keeps on trucking in search of other faces to steal. And all of that before remembering that there are some licensed sound gimmicks to talk about. Just hit this cleverly hidden button on the back and you get some engine noises. So overall, this is basically my ideal truck mode for a modded Optimus Prime. It has just the right amount of photorealistic detailing while still feeling like a big deal to play with. It's packed with so much visual prowess and dense materials while still being a statement of power that just can't be matched. And thank Primus, or wrong, that I got this guy and not the tacky looking NPM version. And now with no script, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a long time. Show you how he transforms. You know, for as long as this guy's been out, I've always heard that the transformation was over-engineered. I'm sorry, what? Don't get me wrong, it is involved, but not to the point of frustration. As far as I'm concerned, it works just like any other leader class conversion should work. There are a lot of steps, but there is a logical method to where everything is supposed to go. And even after getting this guy a decade after his release, sans instructions no less, I still have no trouble transforming him. It's an incredibly smart transformation, especially with how a good chunk of the truck just fold up into the feet. I also love how the entire top and sides of the truck fold up into these back panels. It may not be a kid-friendly transformation, but it is certainly a work of genius. Now, as a design, this is arguably the epitome of the Bayverse ideology, in that it's all jagged angles with the old bits being worn like makeshift armor. But Optimus is definitely one of the cleaner examples compared to the likes of the Fallen or any of the Megatrons. And I think it's because the design team realized that Optimus is just one of those characters that you need to instantly recognize. Because he still has a lot of the classic design traits like the window pegs and the smokestacks, as well as the general color layout. The head sculpt is basically perfect with the ear antenna and the silver faceplate. Unfortunately, the eyes look dead due to the light-up gimmick, which we'll touch upon later. Otherwise, the rest of the design looks pretty chunky compared to the CG model used for the films. He has a major blocky aesthetic, which will no doubt turn off the hyper-accuracy crowd, but it's still a much more faithful rendition compared to the leader class figure from 2007. He also looks better proportionally, with a tiny torso, lengthy legs, and hefty hooves. The body is just filled to the brim with these mecha-like details puffing through the windows and making the masterpiece look like a knob. Really appreciate the spot of gold in the abs, all surrounded by a healthy smash of somewhat muted red and deep indigo. I love that you can adjust the windshield pieces using these hinged ball joints. It gives it a bit more of a visual flair while also offering some playability options. The arms are a bit panel-centric due to how these form the engine part of the truck mode, and because of that, it kind of limits the range of movement while also making them look somewhat messy. But there's some great piston detailing in the biceps, and overall the arms don't look too kibbly. The legs are nice and limber, containing a lot of detail within the shins while also having a good color balance between the blue and the grey. Love how the wheel arches just bulk out the ankles so the whole thing isn't just a flat plastic plank. And I just love recently that these pieces on the cars fold out a little bit. It's a small detail, but certainly an appreciated one. But of course, all that means nothing without decent posability. Head can swivel side to side, hampered only by the inner workings of the gimmick. Shoulders are on solid gear-based ratchets, which have held up really well in the 12 years since this figure's release. Somewhat restricted elbow ratchet complemented by swivels at the bicep and the wrist. Sadly, no waist swivel due to the transformation, but the hips got plenty of clickety-clack in every single direction. Unfortunately, the way that the joints are molded make these thigh swivels borderline useless. The ratchets make a comeback in the knees, along with these adjustable panels for visual variety. All that rounded up with the rare sighting of ball-jointed ankles, which makes standing in most poses a breeze. As for other stuff you can do, you got the pair of these fold-out blades activated with a spring-loaded mechanism. They're actually translucent orange covered in a slightly metallic coat of paint. But as cool as these fold-out blades are, when they're retracted, they're pretty much the only reason the arm can't straighten out. And of course, there's the mecha-like gimmick activated by the switch in his belly. Oh, nothing else, at least I got the voice of Peter Cullen in my house without having to spend 400 quid! Yeah, keep it, I'm good, thanks. And I don't want to keep harping on about it, but this really does put most modern leader class figures to shame. I mean, I get that they're smaller due to design and budget limitations, but most of them don't legitimately fill out the price point with any actual substance. Listen, Sea Shockwave is a great toy with excellent engineering and a labyrinth of detail, but I don't think people are willing to spend nearly 60 quid on a Voyager figure with just a bunch of extra bits to make him go all Macross mode. I mean, I did, but only because I'm unashamedly a Shockwave fanboy. Meanwhile, I only spent about 30 quid on this guy at MCM, and yet I feel like I got more than what I paid for. Not to mention this guy was my holy grail when I was a kid and I never got to see him in person. Thus, when I saw this guy for a reduced price, I jumped at the opportunity and grabbed it before anyone else could nick it. And I have not regretted it since, because this has to be one of my favorite figures in my entire collection. He fits in perfectly with the rest of my Bayverse spots, both old and new, and as a toy on his own, he just gives me that sense of satisfaction that most leaders don't nowadays. I mean, sure, Kingdom Beast Mode, Megatron, and Galvatron were great, but let's be honest, they're also upscale Voyagers. ROTF Optimus completely justifies the price point by being one of the best engineered Transformers in the last decade or so. And if nothing else, he still makes a stronger competitor for the Masterpiece title than the actual Masterpiece. I'm not getting him, I'll stick with this one, thank you. So thanks for watching, and make sure that you have a killer Halloween. But until next time, because there always will be one, this is Keller Lewis, the Media Hood, signing off.